All right, assalamu alaikum. In this refutation, we're going to be dealing with the claims of Pamela Geller from the organization known as Stop Islamization of America. Now here she is on the Joy Behar show, and of course she's making a bunch of bogus claims about Islam and what Islam teaches. She starts off by saying that that there's a jihad and taqiyya, and this is supposed to be deception and lies to advance Islam.
I don't care, whatever.
I mean, we can't dispute the fact that there is jihad commanded in the Quran, that there is taqiyya, which is deception and lies to advance Islam in non-Muslim societies, and I think that we should be working in the spirit of humanity.
Of course, this is totally bogus. You know, they've been throwing around this claim a lot that supposedly there's this teaching in Islam that we have this permission as Muslims to lie to advance Islam. And this is totally bogus. First of all, that's self-defeating, because if you're allowed to lie to advance your religion and people find out that you are lying, would that not defeat your religion? Because people will say, hey, you know, you lied to me. You said this, but I found out that you lied. Or I found out that you are allowed to lie to advance your religion, so I don't want to be with you guys anymore. So the fact that these people are gullible enough to actually put that forward is amazing to me. But you know what's even more dangerous about this claim is that this is the same thing that was said about Jews. If you check the propaganda that was put out against the Jews in Nazi Germany, it was the same exact claim. They claimed that the Jews had this teaching that they were allowed to lie to non-Jews. So what these people are doing is perpetrating the same type of propaganda that they put against Jews, they're putting it against Muslims. And then she says, there's this jihad in the Quran. In what context, Pamela Geller? What does jihad mean? It means a struggle. It means a just struggle. It doesn't mean acts of terror, acts of violence against innocent people. That's not what jihad means. It means, literally, it means a struggle. Okay? And in the Islamic context, it means a just struggle. It can be a struggle, a verbal struggle. It can be a struggle with speaking out against evil, and it could be a physical struggle. And even then, it's still in a just cause. Acts of terror, acts of violence against innocent people, random acts of violence. This is not jihad, Pamela Geller. So please stop with your bogus claims against Islam. Okay? She goes on to say that we need to expunge the ideology that inspired jihad from the Quran.
Societies, and I think that we should be working in the spirit of humanity and brotherhood and love, that we should be working towards expunging the very ideology that inspires jihad, the Times Square bomber, the Christmas balls bomber, the Fort Jihad.
Nothing in the Quran inspired 9/11 or any other acts of terror. Our own government here in the United States, Pamela Geller, has told us that this is the reason that inspired this terrorist attacks.
I'm interested in the question of motivation of these hijackers. My question is really directed to the agents. But what have you found out about why these men did what they did? What motivated them to do
it? I believe they feel a sense of outrage against the United States. They identify with the Palestinian problem. They identify with people who oppose repressive regimes. And I believe they tend to focus their anger on the United States. They identify with the Palestinian problem. They identify with people who oppose repressive regimes. And I believe they tend to focus their anger on the United States.
Notice it's not the Quran, It's not any teachings from Islam. These are the reasons that inspired 9/11. Now here you hear her say that there's this 15-story mosque that'll be looking down on Ground Zero.
How is it religious tolerance to build a 15-story triumphal mosque looking down on the burial ground, the sacred ground of 9/11, when it was Islamic texts?
Because Islam does not...
Did you know that from the location of this Islamic Cultural Center that you cannot see Ground Zero? And from Ground Zero, you can't see the Cultural Center. Did you know that? So what in the world is she talking about? This is all just part of the hype. It's all part of the propaganda. In fact, they keep calling it the Ground Zero Mosque. It's not at Ground Zero, everyone. It's 2.5 blocks away. It is not at Ground Zero. You can't see it from Ground Zero, and you can't see Ground Zero from the location of the Islamic Center. So this is just a bunch of hype and propaganda against Islam and Muslims.
Of 9/11, when it was Islamic texts.
Because Islam does not promote people to fly planes into buildings, many would argue.
Again, she repeats this claim about the Quran is what inspired the 9/11 attacks. Wrong again, Pamela Geller. It is not the Quran that inspired the 9/11 attacks. Nothing in the Quran says to attack innocent people. Okay? Nothing in Islam says to kill yourself. In fact, the Quran says do not kill yourselves. So nothing in the Quran inspired 9/11. In fact, again, once more, here it is again, our own government, the investigators from the 9/11 Commission, this is what they say inspired the 9/11 attacks. Listen.
What have you found out about why these men did what they did? What motivated them to do it?
I believe they feel a sense of outrage against the United States. They identify with the Palestinian problem. They identify with people who oppose repressive regimes. And I believe they tend to focus their anger on the United States.
Then she goes off into this, Hitler was inspired by Islam.
Yes. Well, Hitler was inspired by Islam. Hitler himself said the Armenian genocide, which was the slaughter of under 2 million Christians by the Ottomans, by the Muslim Empire, was his template for the Holocaust.
So what is that?
I don't know where in the world you got that off, but I'm not going to allow you to throw Hitler off on us. Hitler was a product of Western civilization, okay? Hitler was not inspired by Islam. Hitler was inspired by Christianity. And in fact, what Hitler was doing was not an abnormality amongst Western culture. Remember, at the same time that Hitler was being racist and bigoted against Jews in Germany, the British were being bigots against other people in parts of the against other people in different parts of the world themselves. The Americans were also being racist against black Americans, against Native Americans, okay, at this particular time in history. So to try to throw Hitler off on us, on Muslims, as if he was inspired by us, is totally bogus. No, Hitler was inspired by Christianity, okay? It's the Bible that calls the Jews the synagogue of Satan. It's the Bible that says that the Jews killed the prophets and that God is not pleased with them, and they are contrary to all men. That's what your Bible says. Okay, so Hitler was inspired by your Bible. Mein Kampf make references to Christian writings and Christian ideas. Okay, when you look at Hitler's writings, he makes references to Christianity, not Islam. So Pamela Geller, you don't know what you're talking about. In fact, Hitler even admits that he was inspired to treat the Jews by the way the Americans treated the Native Americans, the way they put Native Americans in camps and reservations, and the way they mistreated them in an attempt to get rid of them. This is what inspired Hitler, and here's the proof of that.
According to the book by John Toland entitled Adolf Hitler, Volume 2, page 802, it reads, Hitler's concept of concentration camps as well as the practicality of genocide owed much, so he claimed, to his studies of English and United States history. He admired the camps for Boer prisons in South Africa and for the Indians in the Wild West. and often praised to his inner circle the efficiency of America's extermination by starvation and uneven combat of the red savages who could not be tamed by captivity. So this was Hitler's inspiration, Pamela Geller, not Islam as you claim.